Club of Portland's Friday Forum. City Club is where we bring civic-minded people together to make Portland and Oregon a better place for everyone to live, work, and play. I'm Ted Kay, City Club's immediate past treasurer, and I would like to welcome members and guests alike, those of you who join us today at the Sentinel, and those of you listening on OPB radio or watching on Portland Community Media. Today we are hosting the United States Senate Republican primary debate. The winner of the election will go on to face U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley in the fall. But first, some announcements. The generous support of City Club's corporate and media partners ensures we put on the state's best civic programs week after week. I'd like to thank our media partners, including Oregon Business Magazine. Our current Friday Forum sponsors are Chevron, the Portland Timbers, and Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt. We're grateful for their support and commitment to City Club's mission. Please join me in a round warm of applause for all of them. The former treasurer always claps the loudest. City Club's annual membership drive is in full swing, and we want you to join. For 98 years, City Club has helped shape what Portland is today through research, advocacy, and public forums, and we're here to tackle the tough problems we face now. Government cannot solve these issues alone, nor should it. That's where our members come in, and why we need your support. There's no better time than during our membership drive to save money on membership and receive our thank you gifts like t-shirts, scout books, and tickets to the Oregon Symphony. City Club staff is waiting in the back after the forum to sign you up as a member today. And because of Memorial Day, there will be no Friday Forum next week. On May 30th, Randy Gregg will moderate a panel with 3 prominent design advocates who will share their opinions about how to ensure that Portland has the best buildings for our city. You can learn more about club events, purchase tickets, and become a member on our website, pdxcityclub.org. And as always, City Club will be live tweeting today's event. You can follow or mention us at PDXCityClub, and be sure to follow the conversation by using the hashtag CityClub in your own tweets. And a big welcome to folks who've driven a long way to attend today, like the Deschutes County Republicans. Welcome. And now to our program. Will this be the year that Oregon sends a Republican to the Senate? In a debate moderated by Jack Roberts, we hope that today's debate will give primary voters a clear side-by-side comparison of the candidates that will ultimately set the stage for the fall race against U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley. Moderating the debate today is Jack Roberts. Jack grew up in Eugene, where he graduated from Sheldon High School, the University of Oregon School of Journalism, and the University of Oregon Law School. After 10 years as an attorney in private practice, Jack was first appointed and then twice elected to the Lane County Board of Commissioners. In 1994, he was elected State Labor Commissioner, an office to which he was re-elected in 1998. After 10 years' service as Executive Director of the Lane Metro Partnership, a nonprofit economic development agency for Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County, Jack was appointed to his present position as Director of the Oregon Lottery. Jack and his wife Tammy live in Eugene, as do their 3 adult sons, John, Joe, and Jake. Please help me welcome our moderator to the stage.
Thank you. It is a great privilege to be here today. I'm especially honored to be moderating such an important debate between the 2 leading candidates for the GOP nomination for the U.S. Senate, Jason Conger and Monica Webby. If there's anyone out there who's not familiar with political debates, just think of it as like the debate that occurred last month at Willamette Week, except that we didn't invite all the candidates, and those who were invited will not be asked to leave. I may be asked to leave by the City Club if I ad lib anymore, so I'm just going with the script. This debate actually has several sections. First, each candidate will give a 3-minute opening statement in an order that was previously determined and agreed to by the candidates. Following the opening statements, the candidates will respond to questions that were written in advance of this meeting by the City Club's Friday Forum and research committees and by City Club staff. These questions were not shared with the candidates in advance, so they have not seen them. These are the only questions that will be asked today. There will be no questions from the floor. At the conclusion of the questions, then each of the candidates will have the opportunity to make a 2-minute closing statement, again in the order agreed to in advance. Keeping time at our debate is Greg Wallinger, who is City Club Research and Policy Director, and you guys can't see it, but they have the time right on there, so there will be no excuse for anyone going over. We'd like to ask you as the audience to please be respectful of the candidates. And also, after the applause, which you will give, greeting them to the stage in a few minutes, we would ask that you hold further applause until the end of the program. That's both in the interest of time and also out of respect for our radio audience. The introductions I will read now were provided by the candidates themselves, and I will introduce both of them and then ask both of them to come up here, at which time you're encouraged to applaud. Dr. Monica Webby is currently the Director of Pediatric Neurosurgery at Randall's Children's Hospital in Portland. Monica has nearly 30 years of experience formulating medical policy. She's a past president of the Oregon Medical Association, where she led the 2004 tort reform campaign. In 2009, Monica put her professional reputation on the line by appearing in television commercials which ran nationwide, warning people about the deficiencies contained within the Affordable Care Act. In 2011, Dr. Webby was elected to the Board of Trustees of the American Medical Association on a platform of being a conservative change agent. Monica resigned from the board of the AMA in order to run for the United States Senate last year. She currently resides in Portland with her 4 teenage children. Jason Conger overcame poverty and homelessness in his early life by working his way from junior college to a state university and eventually through Harvard Law School, all while supporting a growing family. He was first elected to the Oregon House of Representatives in 2010 and is now completing his 2nd term. In the legislature, he pushed for tax relief for middle and low-income families, greater educational opportunities for Oregon children, and the necessary funding to move the OSU Cascades toward becoming a 4-year university. He also played an instrumental role in the healthcare reforms in the 2012 session. He and his wife Amy make their home in Bend, where they are raising their 5 children. And now, if you would please, the 2 candidates please come to the podium and, amidst your applause, and we'll get ready to start the debate. Now, while they're taking their places, I will explain a little more detail how the question portion of this will work. The questions, as we said, were prepared by the Friday Forum and City Club staff, and there are actually 4 different kinds of questions that I'm going to try to keep straight. In some cases, we will ask a question of both candidates, and each will have 60 seconds to respond. There are also some questions that will be asked only to one candidate, to which the other candidate will not have an opportunity for rebuttal. And then there are some others in which they'll be directed primarily to one candidate who will have 60 seconds to answer, but the opponent will have 45 seconds to rebut. I have no idea how they decided which questions are which, but we'll try to keep it straight. And then finally, at the end of that, we will have the lightning round, where we'll pose a series of questions which the candidates will just have to answer yes or no, or you can be uncommitted, or as we have the cards for you, you can raise yes, no, or waffle. If for some reason you're reluctant to say waffle, you can just say uncommitted. You're also free to just say yes or no if you want to, but we like the cards because it gives us sort of the game environment that makes me as the lottery director feel at home. And then when you're done, I will read your responses out so people in the radio audience will be able to hear that. But you're not going to be given a chance to explain your answers. So we tried to get questions that are easily reduced to yes and no, but having spent a number of years in politics, I know there is no such question. So with that explanation, you're each going to have your chance for your opening statement, which will be 3 minutes, and by the order that you selected, Dr. Webby will go first.
Thank you all for having me here. I'm excited to be here to talk with you this afternoon. As I've gone around this state meeting people, I get asked one question much more than any other. And it's the same question that my 4 teenagers asked me when we were talking about this race. And that is, Mom, why would you give up a job that you trained until you're 35 years old to do and everybody loves you, to take a job where people say all sorts of mean things about you on the internet, TV, radio, newspaper? And I have to say that has really ratcheted up in the last couple of weeks since the poll came out with me beating Jeff Merkley 45-41. But when I talk with them about this, I answer them with a question or with a story about a little boy that I took care of a few years ago who had a brain tumor. We took the brain tumor out, and then he came back afterwards and gave me a thank you note. And on that thank you note, it said, if we're not here to make life better for one another, then what's the point? And that's the reason that I'm doing this. I'm not a career politician, thank God, but they're the ones who got us into this mess. They vote for laws they don't understand or they don't read. They leave us to suffer the consequences, and when you ask them to be accountable, they point fingers at other people. But I'm not a political neophyte either. I've been working at state and national level to try to improve health care for about 30 years. When I was chief petitioner on that tort reform legislation in 2004, I got my first experience with hate mail. When I ran those ads for talking about the problems with Obamacare in 2009, I had to change my home phone number because I was getting threats. And when I ran for the AMA Board of Trustees as a conservative change agent, I ran on the platform of diversity of opinion, because if everybody's always of the same opinion, then you don't see issues coming from the other side. You can get blindsided. I tell you this so that you know that I'm someone who will stand up for what I believe. We all know that Washington, D.C. isn't working, and we need a new approach, a common sense approach, a problem solver approach. Doctors are very logical, not ideological. We listen to data, listen to the patient, look at the data, and then we make a diagnosis and treat the problem. And we're also able to find common ground without sacrificing principles. Because if you're on one extreme or the other, you're not in the room when the problem is solved. I want to be at the table and represent Oregonians as we try to tackle the big problems in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Now Jason Conger.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank the City Club for hosting this important event and personally welcome the 3 people in the room who can actually vote in the Republican primary. Be sure to come and talk to me after the debate. In all seriousness, this is important. This is an important tradition, an important part of Oregon elections. I take it very seriously, and I think debates are good opportunities for the candidates to inform voters about who they are, where they stand, and how they handle pressure. With that said, I also think that as important as the City Club is, KGW and the Oregonian also host a debate traditionally here, and it's a shame that we couldn't have had that one as well. So the first question probably for a Republican candidate in this race is, can a Republican win in Oregon, right? I mean, I know no one here has ever asked themselves that question, but we should be. And the answer is a resounding yes. the right candidate, the right election, the right matchup, yes, absolutely. It has to be a Republican who can unite Republicans. It has to be a Republican candidate who can win a long-shot election and who can appeal to voters who are not already convinced, voters who are not convinced for or against that Republican candidate. And I've proven that I have the ability to do that. I am eager to get on to the general election at this point. And as long as the odds are, I grew up, my whole family are 49ers fans. And for anybody, most of you probably don't follow 49er football at all, but back in the 70s, they were appalling. The only thing that was predictable about the 49ers was they were going to lose a lot, more games than they won. And then all of a sudden the world changed in the 1980s, and it was a different world, and the expectation changed. And when we win, when Republicans win, when we make this a competitive state, when we prove that we can do it, the expectations will change. And it will be better for all of us, regardless of party, because we need competitive elections. One party in power too long is a recipe for disaster. And we all know all of the things that are going wrong now in Oregon and in our country. We have an opportunity to change that. Ultimately, electability is an issue in this race. When we run against Jeff Merkley, we as Republicans, our candidate must be electable. Our candidate must be solid and able to run the race through to the end, and I will do that.
Now for our first question, this is in the format in which each of you have 60 seconds to respond. What qualities make you the most likely Republican candidate to beat Senator Merkley in the fall? Jason Conger, you're first.
Well, I already mentioned the fact that I actually have won uphill battles. More specifically, I defeated a Democrat incumbent in House District 54, the demographics of which look much like the state. At the time, I think when I started, the Democrat registration advantage was about 7%, and the incumbent was very, very well known and very strong, and we won in 2010 by 12 points. In 2012, the people of District 54 saw fit to send me back to the legislature by a margin of 13%. I ran against a very credible candidate who was well-funded and defeated him by 13 points in a year when Mitt Romney lost in my House district by 11 points. That's proof that I can win. I know how to communicate with voters on issues that they care about and offer solutions to the issues that they're talking about around their kitchen table. And thus, I am the more electable candidate.
Monica Webby, same question.
Well, I think what makes me more electable is I think people realize that the direction we're going is not the right one. I think people realize that the last thing we need is a career politician. They want somebody with a different approach. That's what our founding fathers wanted. People who had been successful in different careers that then come together and bring their experience to the Senate. Also, they can't use that war on women stuff with me. They can't say that I hate women, children, puppy dogs, and ponytails, and all the things that Republicans are supposed to hate. I'm also a bit of an expert in healthcare since I deal with it every day and have been working to improve healthcare for about 30 years at the state and national level, and that is one of the biggest issues right now, and it does affect jobs and economy. I practice in Portland, so everybody is 1 to 2 degrees of separation from me, having taken care of so many children here. And there was a poll that has me beating Jeff Merkley 45 to 41 a couple of weeks ago.
Now we're going to go to a couple of questions, each directed to one candidate with no rebuttal by the opponent. And we'll start with Monica Webby. Despite having no prior experience in government service or running for political office, you've attracted substantial national publicity and endorsements, along with financial and political support from out of state. Why are you attracting so much support, particularly from outside of Oregon, and how do you think Oregonians should view that support?
As one reporter said, I'm the right candidate with the right issue at the right time. And I mean, who would have thought 6 months ago that this would have been a race where they thought Republicans could possibly win? Look at what's happened. Look at the momentum we've gotten and the enthusiasm. And I think that's because people see in me something that people really want. We want to change. We want somebody with common sense. We want somebody who knows how to look at all sides of an issue, that has a proven track record in leadership. I've been president of multiple societies. I'm also able to pull people together. I'm tired of this vilifying each other. How can you sit and call each other names and then expect people to come together and work together? That's not the direction we need to go. We have got to change that. And I'm a person who's always been able to build consensus, and my heart's in the right place, and I think we've got to move forward.
Now a question directed to Jason Conger. Jason, you have a dramatic personal story of overcoming great economic hardship, enabled you to achieve an excellent education and a successful career as a lawyer. How do you believe your background has affected your political philosophy, and in particular, how does it affect your approach to programs and solutions that help the poor and disadvantaged?
Well, as much as I have been very, very blessed, very fortunate to have come as far as we have, I guess, in my family, I recognize that many people face far greater challenges in life. I realize that I am uniquely the beneficiary of growing up in America, in a country where it's possible for someone to barely graduate from an alternative high school, but go on and graduate eventually from Harvard Law School and live what I would call my version of the American dream, with 5 children and my wife of 25 years and our home in Bend. It affects my political philosophy because I understand that there are many people out there who need a hand up. Not a handout, but there are people who need help to become self-reliant and to have the dignity of that self-reliance. And I know that there's a role that we can play as a country in helping them to achieve that.
Now, this is one of those questions that is directed to one candidate for a 60-second answer, but the other candidate is given a 45-second rebuttal. Monica Wehby, you stated that the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, should be repealed and replaced. What should replace it, or how should it be modified in your opinion?
The problem with the Affordable Care Act is that it was a big, massive federal takeover of a fifth of our economy, and it was done in an unproven fashion. It was a big federal takeover full of mandates and increased taxes, and it took away patient choice. It took away the patient's access to their doctors, their insurance plan, interferes with the doctor-patient relationship. I think one of the biggest problems with it is that it dictated what type of plan you had to have. And when you do that, you take away patient choice. People want to be able to choose which plan they have. I think that's one thing we need to do. We need to allow people to put aside pre-tax dollars for health savings accounts, buy insurance across state lines, buy their own plan that they want to buy with pre-tax dollars, so that they have other options, and establish high-risk pools as well.
Jason, you have 45 seconds.
Well, I don't think that there's a lot of disagreement between Monica and me about some of the solutions that are available. I think the odds of achieving them are perhaps greater if I'm elected, in part because I know how to build coalitions and how to pass legislation. And I believe this can actually be done in 2015. And I have to point out that Monica's statements sometimes about her position on health care have confused me a little bit, because she has been supportive of our Democrat senators' legislation the Healthy Americans Act, came out in support of that, and it was, in the words of President Obama, radical, basically the precursor to Obamacare, and had many of the features that we detest in Obamacare as Republicans.
Now, the next question is a follow-up question for Jason, to which there will be no rebuttal. Jason, do you regret voting in favor of Cover Oregon and the budget commitments made to pursue the state's own exchange, and why or why not?
Absolutely, I regret voting for it. In 2011, our choice in the Oregon legislature was to create a state-run exchange or put Oregonians onto the federal health insurance exchange. Federal law requires states to have a health insurance exchange. And back in 2011, when the cost estimates were a lot lower than reality, and with the choice between a more local Oregon-based exchange or an unaccountable, completely unaccountable federal exchange, I chose to vote for the state exchange. Now, of course, we realize that somehow the state has wasted $250 million on a website that does not work. If I would have known that the money would be wasted, clearly I would not have voted for Cover Oregon. And I wish I had known, because it's a waste, it's a shame, and it defies explanation.
Now we're going back to the 60-second question with 45-second response. And this one is directed to Jason Conger. Given the tragedies in Massachusetts, Colorado, and our own Clackamas Town Center, what, if any, changes should be made to federal gun laws?
I believe that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I believe that the intent when amendments to the Constitution were adopted, or when the Constitution itself was adopted, is discernible. I believe that the plain language of the Second Amendment of the Constitution says what it says, that citizens will have the right to keep and bear arms. I don't believe that there is evidence that is truly credible that taking guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens reduces gun violence. Therefore, I do not support any further intrusion into our Second Amendment rights at the federal level.
45-second rebuttal, Monica Webby.
I agree with Jason on this as well. But I also, as a physician, am very concerned about mental health and the fact that we need to be sure that we do have mental health parity in the United States. Whenever these tragedies happen, we always hear that people knew there were problems and that there were issues with the person involved. And so I think it's important that we find ways that we can help people with mental illness to try to prevent these tragedies. And also, in addition to this, I would not support the UN Small Arms Treaty because that does interfere with our national sovereignty.
This will be another question with a 60-second response and a 45-second rebuttal, and this one is directed to Monica Webby. Immigration is a big issue that will undoubtedly be on the Senate's calendar following the election. Do you support amnesty in any form for currently undocumented residents of any age?
I think when it comes to immigration, of course, the first thing that we have to do is secure our borders, because this is a national security issue. We need to know who's here. And I don't support amnesty because I don't think it's fair to those who came here legally. But I do think we have to find a way that we can document those who are here in the United States so that they can work legally as non-citizens. And I think we should consider the use of E-Verify as an option for businesses as well to help protect our American workers. So I also believe that we do have to keep all options on the table. This is a very complex issue that we need to look at and see, whether or not we want to come up with a way that we can find a pathway to legal residency in the future. But I do think people would have to go to the back of the line and pay penalties and taxes as well.
Jason Conger, 45-second rebuttal.
Well, I share the belief that our immigration law is broken. I think a reform should be enacted that starts with enforcing our borders and stops the human trafficking and the movement of illegal goods across the border, as well as enhances our national security. I think we have to be very careful in immigration law reform because our first priority should be to protect jobs for Oregonians, and we need to weigh that in any reform. And I want to add that we should be outraged about the release of over 30,000 illegal immigrants awaiting deportation, including hundreds of violent criminals by the Obama administration. Where is Jeff Merkley right now, and why is he not calling for an investigation and the recapture of those criminals?
Here's a follow-up question for Monica Webby, and this will be without a rebuttal or response. Is it a good idea to offer expedited immigration to foreign doctors who are willing to commit to serve in medically underserved areas or populations? What effect does that, or might that have, on healthcare costs? And is there a risk that the high quality of medical care that we aspire to would be undermined by such a program?
That's a good question, particularly now since we have such a workforce shortage. As we're increasing the number of insured people, that's going to be a real problem. As we all know as physicians and as our society, having health insurance doesn't equal having access to care. And if we allow foreign graduates to have expedited access into the country, we would have to, of course, be sure that they can pass board certification exams and exams that show that they are going to be providing the same or equivalent quality of care that physicians provide now. But that does address a huge issue that we are going to have is the workforce shortage as more and more people are going to be seeking care.
Thank you. Now this will be a 60-second question with a 45-second response, and the question is directed to Jason Conger. Do you support an increase in the federal minimum wage? And if so, how much and over what period of time?
I do not support raising the federal minimum wage. It is clearly being used as a political football right now by the Democrats because they want to create this image of income inequality. But I understand personally in a very real way what it means to make minimum wage. We should not be talking about making a move that could make fewer people able to get minimum wage jobs. We should be talking about why is it that so many people are only making the minimum wage, and what can we do to increase opportunities for them to get out of poverty, because the minimum wage is not a middle-class lifestyle. It is not something you can raise a family on in any kind of adequate way. We need to be talking about why the middle class is shrinking, why more people are out of work now than ever, why our long-term unemployment is so great, and we need to be changing the factors that are driving that.
Monica Webby, 45-second response.
I think we all know how important those minimum wage jobs are for us, particularly when we were kids. I got my first job working at McDonald's when I was in Nashville in high school, and those are very important jobs where you first learn how to work and develop a work ethic and learn what it's like to earn money on your own. I do think the minimum wage is an important safeguard, but I also realize that all economies are local and that it's more important to have these decided by the states. Here in Oregon, we've got the second highest in the country at $9.10 an hour. The problem is our stagnant economy, and I do think we have to be careful to avoid unintended consequences with the CBO report saying that 500,000 jobs could potentially be lost. And we need to incentivize employers to grow their business and invest in their employees.
Thank you. Now the next is another 60-second question and 45-second response, and this one is directed to Monica Webby. Management of the forest lands, federal forest lands, is a policy area in which Oregon's entire congressional delegation has been very active. Where do you see yourself on the spectrum between the timber industry at one end and the environmentalists on the other when it comes to forest management, protection of old growth, timber harvesting, and recreational uses?
I think what's important is that we have to find a balance between sustainable logging and use of our natural resources and protection of our environment. When we look at the plans currently out there now with the ONC lands, the Walden Plan and the Wyden Plan, I believe the Walden Plan is the one that's a little better at this point. And there are three things that need to be determined. First of all is legal certainty. There are so many regulations that are involved with management of forest lands, with the ESA, the EPA, Clean Water, Clean Air Acts. We need some legal certainty here for our timber industry. Second, we need to know what the reasonable and predictable amount of timber is that can be harvested. And third, the reasonable and predictable amount of funding that can be expected, as our timber communities and counties are very dependent on this income for support of their public safety.
So Dr. Webb, you may be able to add mind reader to your list of qualifications, because the follow-up question is one you just answered, so I'm going to just direct this to Jason Conger. Do you have a preference between Senator Wyden's ONC Land Grant Act of 2013 and the bipartisan House bill, the ONC Trust Act, which is the product of collaboration by Congressman Walden, Schrader, and DeFazio?
So let me answer the first question first, which is, am I more for environmentalists or for the timber industry? And the answer is I'm for Oregon. I'm for Oregonians. We care about our quality of life. Obviously, part of the reason we live in Oregon is because we have clean air, we have clean water, we have beautiful forests, we have beautiful rivers. We want those values preserved. But quality of life also involves the ability to be self-reliant and to have a job that you can support a family on. It also involves the ability to fund your schools and fund your basic public services like law enforcement. And in rural Oregon, federal policy, federal inaction, and bad management of our forests is creating a situation where those communities cannot afford basic services. We have to change that. That has to change. And it can be done in a way that will put thousands of people back to work in a short period of time, and will create other jobs, as well as make our forests more healthy and our environment more clean.
Thank you. And I appreciate your conflating those two, allowing me to have you conflate those, because we're starting to get a little bit behind our schedule. So I'm going to skip around some of these questions to make sure we cover the whole range of issues. And this is our first foreign policy question. And this will be 60 seconds for each of you. And we'll start with Jason. Both of you have indicated that you believe that President Obama has shown weaknesses that encourage the Russian incursion into the Ukraine. What should the United States be doing now about Russia's incursion into the Crimea and the pro-Russian demonstrations that are threatening the Ukraine that many believe are being manipulated from Moscow?
I think our president has signaled weakness and indecisiveness to our adversaries abroad. I think that did embolden Russia. Now that Russia is in Crimea, it's too late. We can't start a war with Russia and enter into a military conflict in Crimea, but we can be taking steps to help Ukraine. The first thing we should do, first and foremost, has to do, ironically, with our energy policy. We should be encouraging the export of energy that we have in great abundance in the United States to Europe, so that it is not enslaved to Russia for its energy resources. The second thing we should be doing is supporting the Ukrainian democratically elected government, fulfilling the terms of our treaty with Ukraine, and helping to make sure that Russian expansionism is checked now while we have the chance.
Monica Webby.
I believe that we all know that Russia is resurgent now, you know, with what we've seen in northern Georgia in the past, Crimea, eastern Ukraine now. I think the first thing we need to do is stronger sanctions. And I also support the Magnitsky Act, where we are able to put sanctions on individual Russian leaders. I also believe that we should be helping the Ukraine defend themselves, because we need to help the government by supplying them with what they need to protect themselves. But I think this points to a bigger issue with our foreign policy. You know, what is our foreign policy? Do we have one? We need to come up with consistent guiding principles. We need to be seen as reliable and trustworthy. Our friends don't know if they can trust us, and our enemies don't fear us. And when there's a leadership vacuum, people who are less benevolent than us, like Putin, are going to fill that vacuum, and it leads to global instability.
Now we have a couple of questions for each of you to answer just yourself with no rebuttal. And we'll start with one to Jason Conger. On your website, you indicated that you would like to end all forms of corporate welfare. What specifically are you referring to, and is there a risk that such reforms could have a negative impact on jobs and job growth?
So corporate welfare, I think as Republicans, as taxpayers, we should be as offended by corporate welfare as we are by welfare fraud. And I don't believe that the government is particularly good at picking winners and losers in the economy anyway, but we also need to keep in mind always that it is political, and money matters in politics, and there is a lot of opportunity for the system to be manipulated by special interests to benefit themselves, and that's our tax dollars. That doesn't belong to them. It's public money. It should be used for public purposes. So yes, I want to end corporate welfare, and I think we would benefit as a country, not lose jobs, but gain jobs if we did so. Specific examples, I mean, there are literally thousands of special benefits embedded in state and federal law, including in the tax code. But my favorite example, of course, is the BETC, or the Business Energy Tax Credit, which was abused terribly here in Oregon and still has been this year.
Now here's a question directly to Monica Webby without a rebuttal. You say that Social Security and Medicare need to be put on a path to becoming financially secure. List 2 specific things you would propose to stabilize these programs.
I think the problem with Social Security, Medicare is that they're rapidly on the way to becoming insolvent. First of all, we have to be sure and protect our seniors who have paid into these systems into these programs for their entire life, and we need to respect that. But these programs aren't going to be around when I need them or when our children need them if we don't do something to shore them up. And I think we've got to start having an adult conversation about these and fixing these plans. We've got to look at all different options, looking at cost of living increases, looking at how much on the cap of deductions, looking at the amount or means, looking at means testing as well. I mean, there are so many, as patients, sorry, I started to go, lost my number there.
Now here's a question that you each get 60 seconds for. With all the new oil and gas production and the advantages of a generous domestic supply, we've also had many concerns raised about environmental degradation, spectacular spills, and train and truck accidents, sometimes in the midst of urban or suburban population centers. Given both the risks and opportunities this evolving situation presents for the U.S. and Oregon, what is your position on the opportunities for domestic development of oil and natural gas? And specifically, do you intend, if you're elected, to support the building of the Keystone Pipeline? Also, do you have ideas about new safety regulations for truck and rail transport of petroleum products? We'll start with Monica Webby.
I'm a supporter of the Keystone Pipeline because I think it will add more jobs, but also because it's the safest and cleanest way to transport the Canadian oil, because you know that they are going to develop this resource anyway. And if we are not developing that here, then it's going to be sent elsewhere. And the environment is a global issue, not just our own. And we have the best technology to process this oil. And I think energy independence is key. We don't want to have to be relying on countries that frankly don't like us. You know, energy independence is key to our national security, and it also is a boon to our economy.
Jason Conger.
I happen to agree. I think the Keystone Pipeline should already be under construction. Imagine the number of jobs that would be created. Imagine the importance of moving forward rapidly and decisively in the opportunity to become energy independent for the first time since, I want to say, the 50s, in many, many, many decades. This is an absolutely game-changing prospect for America, and I'm excited about it. I'm very excited about it. Obviously, we have to have safety regulations that protect people and property, but the fact of the matter is technology has enabled us to achieve a dream that a couple of decades ago no one, I think, would have thought was truly possible. And when we achieve it, the importance to our standing and our influence and our ability to diminish the influence of our enemies, especially in the Middle East, will be stunning.
Here's a related question, and I'm going to ask that each of you try to limit your answer to 30 seconds here if we can move along. And this time we'll start with Jason. Governor Kitzhaber has recently made it clear that he will do everything in his power to prevent coal from being transported by rail across our state en route to China. Would you assist Oregon's governor in trying to prevent this if you're in the United States Senate? And do you believe that the Interstate Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution makes regulating such transportation a federal rather than a state issue?
No, I think regulation, so let me answer the last part. There is an interstate commerce issue, but clearly Oregon should have and does have the right to impose safety regulations on products that are being moved through its lands. And I think we should. However, I would not support the governor in trying to prevent the movement of goods through the state. I would support doing it in a way that is not risky, but that creates the jobs that would come with exporting more to a country like China, where we have a huge trade deficit.
Monica Webby, 30 seconds.
I agree with Jason on that. I do believe that that the increase in jobs from the activity at the ports would be helpful, but it has to be done in an environmentally safe way. I know there's a lot of resistance in this state to doing that, and I think we do have to respect what the citizens of Oregon believe and want. But I do think if we can do it in a safe way, it would be good for our ports and for our economy.
Here's another one I'd like to ask you to try to answer each in 30 seconds. And we'll start with Monica Webby. Do you favor stronger federal laws ensuring equal pay for equal work regardless of gender? And if so, how would you make those laws stronger or more effective?
You know, this law was passed, equal pay and non-discrimination, back in 1963, and laws are already existing to prevent unequal pay. But I do think that we have to be careful that people are able to have merit pay and then have their pay commensurate with their level of education. So I think that, of course, we're all for equal pay for equal work, but we have to be careful not to put unnecessary burdens on our employers as well.
Jason Conger.
Well, I have a daughter who is 14 years old and 4 sons of varying ages. I want my daughter to have the same opportunities to pursue a career, motherhood, marriage, not, whatever. I want her to have the same opportunities that my sons do. And so I think it is important that from a philosophical perspective, we all endorse equal pay for equal work. However, with all due respect to my colleagues, fellow attorneys in the room, I think strengthening the law the way that's being proposed would just be a put attorneys to work act, not successful in accomplishing the goal.
So this is our last question in this, before we go to the lightning round. And so this will again be a question for each of you. And I think you can take up to a minute on this. Of the present U.S. senators, who do you see yourself most closely aligned with philosophically, and in issues that you specifically think are relevant, you think that those people are representing a point of view similar to what you would do in the Senate? We'll start with Jason Conker.
Well, I can't think of any one senator who is exactly in the same place that I am on every issue. And I wouldn't expect that, as a matter of fact. We're all human beings. We have our own point of view. But I do think I have a lot of respect for Marco Rubio because of his background and winning against long odds in Florida. I also like Mike Lee a lot. Seems to be a man of integrity and a man of his word, which I think is urgently needed, that kind of integrity in politics to restore public trust and to get people voting again or feeling like their vote matters. Well, I'm cheating because I went to 2, but I could keep going.
Monica Webby. Is this on? Monica Webby.
I think the senator I admire most is Senator Tom Coburn. He's a fellow physician, and I have a lot of respect for him. And what I respect most about Senator Coburn is that he's not afraid to tackle the tough issues like debt and entitlements and our budget. He's not afraid to take on these tough issues, and he's also a man of integrity and stands up for what he believes, whether it's politically popular or not. And that's a quality that I truly admire, someone who is willing to do what they know is right.
All right, thank both of you. And now we're going to go to the lightning round. This is the one where we will ask questions that you must answer yes or no, or uncommitted, or not sure, whatever. You can. Do you guys have your paddles up there? Have you?
How about if we say yes or no?
Yeah. And then you can verbalize if that doesn't, which is actually better for the audience anyway. And we'll try to get through these quickly. So we'll start with, are you in favor of a constitutional amendment requiring a balanced budget? Jason?
Yes.
Yes.
That's easy enough. Are you in favor of the Equal Rights Amendment? Monica?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Are you in favor of a means test for Social Security benefits? Jason?
Can't answer yes or no to that because you didn't say where the means testing was, right? I mean, that's kind of relevant to these questions, Jack.
I didn't write them. I'm just reading them.
I would say give me more details and I'll respond yes or no.
Monica?
I would say conditional yes.
Do you believe that requiring the presentation of government-issued public identification is a hindrance to voter participation? Monica?
What type of identification, Jack?
Government-issued photo ID.
Do I believe it's a hindrance?
Do you believe that requiring that would be a hindrance for voter participation if that were required to vote?
No.
No.
Jason? Okay. If you had been on the floor of the Senate in 1972, would you have voted for Title IX? Jason?
Yes.
Monica?
Yes.
Should we eliminate the Electoral College and choose our president by the popular vote? Monica?
Yes.
Jason?
No.
You said no, right?
Yeah, I said no.
Okay. Do you support waterboarding as a method of coercing information from terrorists? Jason?
Yes.
Monica?
Yes.
Does the Second Amendment protect an individual's right to carry a gun into a school? Monica?
I'm sorry, one more time, Jack?
Does the Second Amendment protect an individual's right to carry a gun into a school?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Jason?
Oh, this is lightning round, isn't it? I'm supposed to answer faster.
Lightning, lightning, come
We're
on.
waiting for lightning to strike.
Yeah, there's some risk in that. I'm going to say, yes, it protects the right, but not completely without restriction.
Okay. It's a little out of the spirit of the lightning round, but I think you're forgiven, particularly being a lawyer, being asked a question like that.
You can't imagine how painful it is to answer yes or no.
I know, it's hard to bill for that. Do you, I say that as a lawyer myself. Okay, do you support public funding for abortion? Jason?
Absolutely not.
Monica?
No.
You said no?
No.
Do you support an immediate withdrawal of all remaining U.S. troops in Afghanistan? Monica?
I don't think we should withdraw until the country's stable, or else we lose all the ground we gained.
Yes, your answer is no. Jason?
The answer would depend on what the recommendations of the military commanders. You know, I would never make a call like that without knowing the mind of the generals
Okay.
on the ground. So I
Okay.
guess that's a maybe.
Okay, I appreciate the fact that this is not a question that you can necessarily answer yes or no, and you didn't have your waffle paddles with you, so you both gave a diplomatic answer. Do you support term limits for members of Congress? Jason?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you believe that state and federal laws prohibiting discrimination in public accommodations should be amended to allow owners of small businesses to refuse to provide services that they believe violate their religious beliefs? Monica?
I don't think we should discriminate against anyone in business.
Jason?
Yes.
Do you support labeling genetically modified foods? Jason?
Yes, depending on what has to be on the label, right?
Monica?
I don't think there's any data that GMOs are dangerous, but I do think if people want to label their foods organic when they are organic, that would be a better option.
No. I appreciate these are actually good questions for people to elaborate on, but the spirit of this is to try to move forward. So there is the opportunity to say, it depends, or something like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, so no
Okay, so it
explanations?
depends. Sorry. Believe me, you guys are doing a great job with this. Do you support driving cards or something like a license, driving license, for undocumented workers? Monica?
For illegal workers?
Well, the term that's used here in the question is simply undocumented workers.
No.
Jason?
No.
Do you support the privatization of liquor sales in Oregon? Jason?
Yes.
Monica?
I see both sides of that issue.
Do you support federal legislation to make marijuana a Schedule II controlled substance? Monica?
a Schedule II controlled substance? Yes.
Jason?
I'm sorry, I have no idea what a Schedule II controlled substance is versus what it is now.
That's your answer. That completes our lightning round, and now we're ready for closing, I was going to say closing arguments, closing statements. And these will be 2 minutes apiece, and again, in the agreed order, we'll start with Monica Webby.
Thank you for having me here this afternoon. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to speak with all of you. How many of you think your children are going to have the same opportunities that you had growing up? You know, Americans know that our country's headed in the wrong direction. Senator Merkley believes that you need a massive federal bureaucracy that dictates, mandates, controls, regulates every single aspect of your life. I don't believe that. I believe in the individual, and I believed that we don't like to be micromanaged from Washington, D.C. I believe in an America that has more jobs and less reliance on subsidies, more opportunity and less dependence on government. Polarization is the worst that it has ever been. And this vilifying of others that we disagree with has got to stop. Our greatest enemies are those that are trying to divide us. It's like Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We are better than that. We are the United States of America, and there's no problem that this nation of pioneers cannot overcome if we work together. Nobody ever comes to a pediatric neurosurgeon with a minor problem. And there's no greater honor for me than when I'm in the pre-surgery area and parents hand to me their baby, what they treasure most in the world, and say, Dr. Webby, take care of my baby. And I promise you that I will take that same commitment, that same trust to being your United States Senator. So I ask for your vote and ask for you to keep your doctor and change your senator.
Jason Conger.
As Republicans, we are engaged right now in the process of voting for our nominee to take on Jeff Merkley. I believe, I know, that we have a unique, rare chance to defeat an incumbent senator as Republicans and offer an argument for our beliefs, for our ideas, and our solutions. That opportunity has been served up by Senator Merkley's own failures and by the national circumstances and by the mood of the voters, which I think is ready for change. They are ready for someone with an alternative. We have that chance, and we cannot, as Republicans, afford to throw it away. There are many issues swirling around my opponent's candidacy right now. Those issues I have no opinion about other than as a voter. I think that they're very relevant to the decision about how to vote because they represent risks, and we can't afford to take a risk of throwing this election away. Ronald Reagan was one of my heroes as I grew up and became a voter. He said, "There are those who believe America is weakening, that our glory was the brief flash of time called the 20th century, that ours was a burst of greatness too bright and brilliant to sustain, and that America's purpose is past. We were meant to be masters of destiny, not victims of fate. Who among us would trade America's future for that of any other country in the world? And who could possibly have so little faith in America that they would trade her tomorrows for her yesterdays?" I believe in that forward-looking vision. I believe in the potential of us as Americans and in the uniqueness of this country. When I was struggling to change my circumstances, to go from poverty to a safe, comfortable life where I could raise my family and have the dignity of supporting them, I looked at this and thought, this is what is important about America, and this is what we cannot allow to slip away. We cannot lose our values. We cannot lose sight of our potential. I'm Jason Conger. I am thrilled to be here with you today. Appreciate all your attention and the free lunch, and look forward to seeing you again after Tuesday.
Well, that wraps out our forum for today, and as the past treasurer, Ted Kay, is making his way back up to adjourn this, I just want to add my thanks to both of you for an extremely high-level debate, and I can tell you that as a Republican voter who has not yet cast his ballot, you continue to make it a very, very tough choice for me, but it's a terrific choice, I believe, for the Republican Party, for the state of Oregon. So I want to thank both of you, and I was going to ask everyone to give you a round of applause, but I think they just did.
Well, that's the end of today's program. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us on May 30th for a program on Portland Architecture and Design Review. And as we adjourn for today, please join me in offering sincere thanks to our moderator, Jack Roberts, our timekeeper, Greg Wallinger, the three sponsors I missed in the introductions, Chevron, Girding, Edelin, and Morel, Inc., and our U.S. Senate Republican candidates, Jason Conger and Monica Webby.